everyone, my name is Rabeen, and today's video is gonna be more so focused on my personal journey with depression, how I've struggled with it, and how I'm learning to cope with the emotional loneliness that's come with being depressed for a vast majority of my life. And to sort of give you like a background or like a backstory, I was diagnosed with depression back when I was 15, and I'm currently decently older than that now. So I've been battling it for a few years, and I was definitely at my peak in high school. I still currently am. And if you want me to be extremely honest with you, sometimes it feels like no matter how much effort you put in trying to stabilize your life, trying to be quote-unquote normal, it will never work. Because I remember when I was severely depressed, and like it was a struggle for me to like literally even get out of bed. Even like slight triggers like me watching TikTok videos and seeing people being energetic and happy would make me extremely upset, because I'm like, why do you have the energy to take care of yourself, to be so energetic, to do X, Y, and Z when I'm here and I can't even do the bare minimum? Not to say that the person in that video didn't have their own struggles, but it was just to say that was my kind of mindset at that time, right? Sometimes when I am still severely depressed and like those thoughts reoccur in my head, right? Something that I learned is that I've kept comparing myself to the version of normal that our society has set, right? And our society has deemed normal as being functional, right? Functional in the sense that you're able to take care of yourself, you're able to take care of your hygiene, you're able to maintain a study schedule or a work schedule, and you're able to abide by it. You are taking care of your eating habits, you have sleep hygiene. But when you're someone who is struggling with depression, it takes a lot out of you. I'm being really honest with you. It takes a lot out of you. I feel like majority of your energy goes into just taking any sort of negative or detrimental or hurtful thoughts out of your head, because your main focus is trying to stay alive and healthy, right? I think I felt very lonely when I was depressed, and I still currently am, of course, but I felt extremely lonely, and it's because I didn't feel like anyone in my life understood the amount of pain that I was dealing with. Like, wallahi, like there are times where it has been so hard, and I try to reach out to the people around me, and I try to tell them what I've been going through, or I try to give them a glimpse of life through my eyes, and they don't understand. And something that I learned throughout this entire journey is that it's a very harsh thing to say, but it is what I've noticed. When your pool of blood reaches someone, they are quick to leave because they don't know how to clean up that mess. And what I mean by that is, when someone feels overburdened by your problems, or when someone does not know how to cope up with your problem, their innate response is to leave because they can't handle that situation. And I'm not saying that you should go ahead and you should overburden yourself with another person's issue. But maybe if we sit down and we offer that person as much as we can in that moment, even if it's just sitting beside them and listening to them, not even talking, just listening, it would heal this loneliness epidemic that all of us feel, not even people who are solely depressed feel, but it would heal this loneliness epidemic, because it would give people a sense of comfort that, okay, even if this person isn't talking to me, they're still physically present with me. I don't have to, at the very least, I don't feel physically alone. Because physical loneliness is one thing, right? And I like to categorize both as very different things: physical loneliness and emotional loneliness. Physical loneliness does not mean you are emotionally lonely, because just because you are physically alone in that moment does not mean you do not have people who are present in your life for you emotionally. But emotional loneliness is a lot more detrimental, because it feels like your heart is already broken, and the people around you don't know how to fix it, and you don't know how to fix it yourself. Because you're left with so many different thoughts, you're left with so many different feelings, and there's no one you can share it with. So it's just there sitting in a box, and it's rotting, because you've never been given a space to be able to sit down and process everything that you've been going through. And this was very evident for me when I was depressed, because I feel like not everyone is able to cope up with the level of depressing, morbid, just downright upsetting thoughts that you feel when you are severely depressed. You're not able, like a lot of people are not able to, and I'm not saying that they should be able to. And a very big argument to this is you should reach out to a therapist or a professional about this, which I agree, because these people are clinically trained and these people know how to respond to situations like this. But this is going to be me speaking down on therapy for a second, but I feel like a lot of people think that therapy is a big magic bottle that you're going to be given, and like if you go to therapy and you talk to a therapist, like all your issues are going to be solved and magic rainbow sunshine, everything is going to be fine, la-di-dee, la-di-doo. But that's actually not the case, because you could be paired up with a therapist who does not understand your emotional needs at all. And the thing is, with therapy, the thing that I've seen is that it's very by the book. It's a very systemic approach, and a lot of people do not like to meet you at a human level. They don't treat you as a person, as a human being with feelings, with someone who has been through something difficult and is currently struggling. They're treating you as a client that they're meeting for a set time and leaving. So that level of understanding is also kind of diminished in that sense, because there's a very big roadblock, and that's that emotional, that there's not a big emotional capacity in there. Maybe that is good for the therapist, because they shouldn't develop emotional bonds to their clients, but, and that's not what I'm trying to say anyways, but yeah. All I'm trying to say is that depression is extremely lonely. Right? The really harsh reality is that not everyone is going to meet you at your level. Not everyone is going to show the level of understanding that you need, whether you want them to or not, whether it's an extremely close relationship. And that might be devastating at first, right? And it's because you kind of inherently expect a certain response from them, because of the level of closeness and because of the level of love that you have in that relationship. But I think another thing that's really going to kind of ease the healing process is fundamentally understanding that. Simply understanding that not everyone is going to meet you at your level. But how do you cope with that, right? How do you cope with that understanding? How do you cope with the fact that, okay, the people in my life not always are going to understand where I'm coming from, and like it just makes me feel more alone, right? Now, based on everything I told you, you would probably think that I would tell you that you would need to find peace in your loneliness. But I'd be then lying to both you and myself. Because the truth of the matter is, when I was met with a lack of understanding towards my situation by the people closest to me, that level of hurt contributed to my emotional loneliness and my tendency to remain socially reserved, because I didn't want to really hang out with people anymore, because I didn't trust them anymore. When the people closest to me showed me that they didn't understand what I was going through, or they clearly didn't understand the severity of my situation, I minimized my own problem for myself, because in my head I always thought that if they aren't giving me much of a response, my problem isn't that big of a deal anyways. But what did that result in? All of my feelings, my hurt, my pain, it was all minimized, and I shut all my emotions down in a box and refused to open it because I felt invalidated. I was scared of facing that same invalidation, so I stopped sharing my problems with other people. But that level of isolation kept me very lonely because I had no one who understood me on an emotional level. And you could totally make the argument that the people in your life don't owe you that level of understanding because they're not your therapist, or that your feelings aren't their responsibility to manage. But my response to that is, why are we treating basic empathy and understanding as a commodity? I can understand that therapists or other professionals are trained to manage difficult situations and they can offer substantial advice on how to manage these issues, but to quickly diminish the connotation at a basic level, I think we should all strive to provide as much understanding as we can to those we care about. And it's unfathomable to me that some people don't think this way. To be very honest, in my life, I began to resent those who didn't understand me because it felt as if they didn't care about me. Because if they cared about me, why was I deprived of that level of understanding? However, the only way I learned how to heal from that level of loneliness was fundamentally understanding that the people in my life had different thresholds of understanding, especially in regards to situations they haven't been through. Just because they didn't understand what I was going through, that does not diminish any pain that I was put through or the effort they put in trying to listen to me. Although I made the argument that we should strive to provide as much understanding to those we care about, the people in my life did as such. I was simply blind to it because of my own heart. I learned to let go of resentment because I held on to so much resentment, and it was only fueling my desire to self-isolate and remain both emotionally and physically alone. I started communicating my feelings to those around me, opening up about how I felt. And at first, again, I was met with a level of confusion or maybe even a bit of hurt from my friends. However, with time, the people in my life start to understand my perspective, which then allowed me to strengthen the relationships I had in my life. Because what I fundamentally learned, and I want you to take away from this video, is people offer you what they can at any given moment. If you all show just a little bit of understanding towards each other in our situations, maybe it will heal this loneliness epidemic that not only people suffering through mental illness feel, but people at a larger scale also feel. Because it would potentially eliminate this negative notion that we have regarding loneliness because we finally understand where it stems from.